Alright, what's going on everyone? Welcome back to the channel if you're returning. If it's your first time here, welcome in. I'm Gerardo. We're going to be talking about PulseChain in this video, and more specifically, the DeFi that can happen on PulseChain, such as validating, staking, and yield farming, also known as liquidity mining. So we're going to talk about all of that and more in this video. So strap in. We're gonna talk about PulseChain. All right. First of all, what is PulseChain, right? Let's get into what it actually is. I won't touch on this too much because I think we've already kind of cemented in your head what PulseChain is, but nonetheless, if it's kind of your first time hearing about it, or if you just kind of want a refresher, because you can learn new things, right? Whenever you review things you think you already know. So first of all, what is PulseChain? It's just a fork of Geth, which is the most popular Ethereum client, okay? So it's just a fork of already tested code, open source software that you can just copy paste, make adjustments to as you please, and pretty much just inject whatever Pumpamentals game theory you want as long as you can build it. So what exactly is it, and why is Ethereum being forked? Well, for higher throughput, because obviously the gas fees are absolutely nuts, and I made a whole video kind of describing. We actually touched on that video a lot of the points we're going to touch on in this video. We're going to touch on some new ones, I believe, in this video too, but these are pretty similar. So if you want to know more on exactly all of that, check out that video on how it's solving Ethereum gas fees. Check that one out. All right, I'll leave it up here. But we're going to be getting, essentially, if you hold any ERC20 tokens, they become PRC20 tokens. Your ERC 721s, also known as your NFTs, become PRC 721s. So NFTs on the PulseChain. And ETH becomes PLS. So the whole point of PulseChain in the first place, again, is solving Ethereum gas fees. And in the meantime, while we're forking Geth, might as well throw some cool things in there. Like, let's just copy over the entire system state. And again, throw some cool game theory on it. Now, a main difference of PulseChain and Ethereum is the consensus protocol. And you can actually say PulseChain is more similar to BSC, Binance Smart Chain, in that way, because it uses a proof of stake authority protocol, which combines proof of authority and delegated proof of stake. So the proof of authority really allows validators who have good hardware to be chosen. And then once that's the case, then the delegated proof of stake mechanism allows users like you and I to delegate our PLS stake to these validators in return for fees, right? In return for fees as rewards. So the reason why that's kind of important is because BSC has been proven and battle tested, and it works, right? And a lot of transactions are done on BSC. I think there was a point in time, I don't know if it's still the case, but I know there was a point in time where BSC actually surpassed Ethereum in daily transactions. So the chain definitely grows quicker, right? Because it's producing blocks every 3 seconds as opposed to every 13 seconds. So the chain is going to grow quicker, but nonetheless, it's a faster chain, right? Your blocks are validated quicker, and not only that, since you have only 33 validators using good hardware to pretty much run their nodes, then you generally have reliable nodes. And if you have the argument of centralization via only 33 validators, think about how many mining pools are actually mining the blocks in Ethereum. It's not too many. You could probably name less than 33 of them that are the main ones. Okay, so like I said, users like you and I can delegate our pools to these validators as long as they offer attractive APY or good uptime. We'll get into that in a bit. But like I said earlier, since we're injecting the entire system state, one cool thing one cool consequence of that is that PulseChain itself, it competes with these empty at launch blockchains, because have we had Ethereum forks in the past? Clearly, BSC is one of them, and it's been successful. So to see that empty blockchains can be successful at launch, empty forks of Ethereum like BSC or even like Polygon, right? I should have put that in here. Well, both of those were empty clones of Ethereum, and they did pretty well. I mean, their native tokens did pretty well. Like BNB, when BNB launched, Binance Smart Chain wasn't a thing, right? So BNB launched, and it did a 50x pretty quickly, right? And it was just a utility token for their exchange. But then once BSC, the actual smart chain, launched, it was just a clone of Ethereum, they launched an empty, not even with a native token, right? They just kind of duct taped their old utility token, BNB, which has its own chain already, onto BSC. So it's a 2-chain system. And this, I guess you could argue that a dual chain system is more vulnerable to, it just has double the surface area of attack, right? So I won't get too much into that, but what I'm trying to say here is that it competes with empty at launch blockchains, which most of them are. So when you think of why hasn't anyone launched, a clone of Ethereum, a fork of Ethereum with actual system state, like, I don't know. Looking back, it's like, well, why didn't anyone launch a blockchain CD? And then you realize, well, eventually someone had to do it. So here we go. The fact that the Ethereum system state is injected, in my opinion, it bootstraps a bunch of communities. The Hex community being an obvious one, right? They kind of have a new blockchain. They're already ready. They're down. They're so down, and they're just ready to use it. So I would imagine there are other projects or dApps that are, you could argue they've been priced out, and so they might want to come over. And so you kind of already have a bunch of communities that are ready to use. So you basically already have users. So I think that's pretty cool. And I think something like 50,000 users staked to get into PLS. So I would imagine you already have users, is what I'm trying to say here. And if you're already starting off with a nice user base, you kind of have a nice little head start, in my opinion. So if we talk a little bit about bridging and liquidity, we can see that the Pulse ETH bridge is going to be the main mechanism via which value is bonded between the ecosystems. So, and the real world, right? I point that out here. I'll just read it. The PLS ETH bridge will bond value between the ecosystems, PulseChain and Ethereum, and to the real world. And so I showed 2 examples of paths where you can derive value, right? So what is the value of a PRC20? Well, what's the path to get there? And I got to give credit to Kareem, because he kind of popularized, in my opinion, that phrase of the path to get there. And it's so important, because at the end of the day, it really just is all ratios of these coins in these pools. So how do you get value for a PRC20? Well, one example is between the ecosystems of Ethereum and PulseChain, right? ERC20s are worth some dollar value or some Ether value. And so they're interchangeable with Ether. And so this Ether will be 1-to-1 interchangeable via the bridge for a PETH, right? It's just 1-to-1. I kind of already explained how bridges work. If not, again, go ahead and check out the previous video on PulseChain, solving Ethereum gas fees via layer 1 solution. And so this PETH will be interchangeable directly with PLS because they're on the same chain, right? And then your PLS will be directly interchangeable with PRC20s, and therefore giving those value. So you see kind of the chain, I guess, excuse the pun, of value going on here. And again, you can connect it to the real world as well, where Ether is worth some US dollar amount, say $3,000. So will 1 PETH. However, whatever the pulse to PETH ratio is will determine the price of a PLS. So if it's, 3,000 to 1, then a PLS will be worth, say, $1 in that case, if that's the ratio in the pool. And then say you have a 1-to-1 PRC20 to PLS ratio, therefore that coin is worth 1 PLS, therefore worth $1, if that makes sense. So it depends on the path to how you get to what you're trying to value to determine its value. And the path has to start with something that actually has value. So I give some examples here of other kind of bridging ideas and wrapping ideas that could be possible, kind of describing here how these two seem inefficient because you're effectively taking something on the Pulse chain and bridging it over onto a slower, more expensive chain, which is Ethereum, which doesn't make too much sense to me, but I guess you could do it, and I'm pretty sure PLS to EPLS will be a thing. So if you want price exposure to PLS without actually being on Pulse chain, you'll be able to do that. I don't know why you would want to, but hey, have at it. Now, this one's a little more interesting to me, and note how I didn't write this little note next to it, because I think being able to be exposed to the price of the Hex we know and love, which you can call it Hex or eHex, being able to be exposed to that via a wrapped version of that on PulseChain, I think that'd be pretty cool, actually. Lower fees. Like, you won't be able to stake these wrapped tokens, obviously, because they're not created by the Hex contract itself on either chain. So it won't be able to interact with the contract, right? You can't stake these wrapped tokens. That was kind of answering a question in a comment I got recently about these wrapped, like a wrapped eHex. Will we be able to stake it? No. A wrapped PHEX? No. You'll only be able to stake PHEX on PulseChain and stake normal hex on Ethereum, but you can't stake wrapped tokens. So just a little note here at the bottom that we're going to have thousands of new coins just boom coming into existence at the same time. And the moment that bridge opens, it's going to be some price discovery I don't think we've ever seen before. It's going to be nuts. Wow, we're already 10 minutes in and we haven't even gotten to the DeFi. Oof. I mean, if you're here, I mean, you're a real one. Okay, so let's touch a little bit on the Pumpamentals of Pulse before we get into the actual DeFi. This is all just kind of context. Again, I know this might be driving the same points home, but a lot of you guys are new, right? The channel is growing. We have new people who are very new to crypto, very new to Hex, new to PulseChain, whatever. And you want to be empathetic, right? You want to, these people matter. They're important. And we want to, even if I need to drive the same points home, as long as I get everyone on the same page and understanding and caught up, I think it's worth it. So if you already know all this stuff, feel free to skip to the actual DeFi stuff. I'll do my best to leave timestamps in this video, so you can go ahead and skip to that. But some Pumpamentals, which, you know, it's a pretty cool term. It pretty much speaks to things that induce a price positive feedback loop, something like a Bitcoin halving or a low inflation rate, for example. Low inflation rate, deflationary. It's a 0% inflation on PulseChain, right? You won't be minting new coins. There is no mint new coins thing function. You can't call that. It's not a thing, right? It won't be a mintable token. So once it's created and you have the initial supply of whatever it is, we have our next slide on supply. That's going to be the max supply. And after that, it's only going to be down via this 25% fee burning mechanism, where every transaction fee is going to burn a quarter of the actual fee. Another Pumpamental is the fact that it has a very high supply to start, and people feel richer having a lot of one thing, and so these coins will always kind of feel cheap to them. And so this is a nice little unit bias thing where you feel better if you can buy 10,000 of something or 1 million or 1 billion of something versus just being able to get like 0.1 of it, like 0.1 Bitcoin or something like that. So that's pretty cool. A few more notes here on the Pumpamentals, the fact that it is a new coin. So you could argue not that liquid, but that depends on initial liquidity. We'll see. It's a new coin. A lot of hype around it, a lot of good marketing pitches and narratives, like the biggest airdrop in history, a faster, better Ethereum. And not only that, again, it's pricing in projects and dApps that were priced out. So devs can come along and play. People who use Hex or Decentraland or any of those like priced out use cases can come over and play. And not only that, obviously the founder of Hex created this. So you could say, well, he made something that appreciated a lot. Maybe I'll bet on the jockey, if you know what I mean. Not only that, I get the impression that PLS has very little to potentially no gatekeeping, in the sense that I don't think the corruption that's seen around Hex is going to be seen around PLS, hopefully. You would hope so, right? In an ideal world. We'll see. We'll be hopeful and we'll see. So this is kind of the last topic before I'm going to actually get into the DeFi of PulseChain. So the supply itself. Based on my math, tell me what your math is below, but based on my math and on the amount of USD sacrificed, the volume bonuses, the time curve, after the AMM bot comes in and mints that extra 2.5% for the pools, the Genesis address minting 1% for whatever the heck it wants, I came to a conclusion of around 137 trillion Pulse total supply to start. And again, that will be max supply. So where were we? Here we go. The majority of that Pulse is going to be distributed to the actual sacrifice set, the people who sacrificed real value in the form of Ether, USDC, DAI, Hex, BNB, like whatever, ADA, Doge. You could have sacrificed BTC, so many coins, right? Those guys are going to get the most PLS. They're going to get this supply, basically. And the apathetic ETH holders who didn't sacrifice and just held ETH are going to be diluted by this inflation of 1 million X, right? Because if you hold 1 ETH, right? That $3,000, for example, could have gotten you, I don't know, like 30 million pulse. Whereas if you just hold it, but if you sacrifice that ether, it could have gotten you 30 million pulse. However, if you just hold it, it'll just get you 1 pulse. So yeah, now you see what I mean by being diluted by a lot, at least a million X. So just a note on the supply, because you kind of have to bring this up, the fact that you had OA daughter addresses come in and sacrifice 14 billion near the end. So if you just divide 14 over 14.7, which is the total amount sacrificed, then you get the actual ratio that it kind of took up, and it's about 95%. I don't know why people are complaining. This is obviously good for market cap as a marketing metric because you have a lot of supply. It's obviously good for price, assuming this, these entities hold the coins similar to Hex, right? We already saw this narrative, so it's not really something to touch on too much. But you can also think about this is potential, so that these addresses can use this PLS as incentive for protocols in the future. Now, let's get into the actual DeFi. So if you stuck around for the first 16 minutes of just general overview, let's get into the actual topic of the video, okay? One thing you can do with your PLS is stake it. A kind of like a cornerstone of DeFi is staking. And this is sort of a passive income strategy, or you could call it a leveraged investment strategy, because you're basically getting coins on your coins. And so that's not only is that obviously a good thing in your general cryptos, but in a deflationary environment, that's pretty powerful, right? Where the actual supply is just going down, yet you're gaining coins on your coins. I think staking is going to be heavily incentivized. So it's actually the validators that are able to stake Pulse to kind of put their skin in the game and say, I'm going to mine these blocks honestly, or not mine, I'm going to produce these blocks honestly, otherwise I'll get slashed. And so the validators staking their Pulse. However, like I mentioned earlier, users like you and I can delegate our Pulse stakes to these validators, and they're going to compete for our Pulse, basically, these validators, by offering attractive APY, good uptime. Maybe there's a popular community member you want to support, and they're public about, which validator they're running. And so it'll be an interesting thing where it's basically a contest, right? It's going to be a competition, and that game theory gives that kind of stickiness to the ecosystem, in my opinion, where people want to keep playing, keep hanging out in the ecosystem. And so I think it'll be cool to have a nice dashboard where people can kind of see the validators with the best APY, uptime, and so on. Maybe kind of like a social media thing for social media, not media, but like a social dashboard. People can get really creative with this. So just, if you're that kind of guy who can build cool dApps, who can build cool sites that can kind of query the blockchain in real time, then you might want to think about that if you haven't already, right? So here is kind of like not the main, but another big kind of part of DeFi, which is liquidity mining, also known as yield farming. I believe these are synonymous terms. So I'm going to give you some examples, like SushiSwap back in the day. They're pretty much just a fork of Uniswap on Ethereum itself, where it gave the users this incentive of, not only are you providing liquidity in order to earn fees and be a market maker, but now you're actually able to do that. Plus, we're giving you these sushi tokens. So it's like, all right, I'm going to migrate my liquidity from Uniswap over to SushiSwap and earn fees as well as these now sushi tokens. PancakeSwap did the same thing. It basically copied SushiSwap over on Binance Smart Chain, and it gives users the incentive. I believe it's to earn these cake tokens as incentive to provide liquidity. And so you see this all over the place. I think, I might be mistaken, did Polygon give Matic tokens as incentive to liquidity provide? I'm not sure. I don't know. Someone in the comments answer that about Polygon if you know, because I'm not too familiar. But so you kind of get the situation where you're like, all right, maybe we see PulseSwap or whatever it's going to be called, hence the question mark. But I could see a situation where you have this sort of this AMM that's not necessarily the fork of Uniswap v2, but a separate AMM that actually is more similar to SushiSwap or PancakeSwap, where they provide that incentive where, like, okay, you can earn these PRC20 tokens or this PLS by providing liquidity. And where are these PRC20 coming from? It's from the AMM fixer bot. So you get this really cool synergistic situation where this AMM bot is coming to fix the pools because the supply is being inflated so much by like 1,000,000x or so. And so you can't have such little PLS in the pool, so you kind of have to pump it up with PLS. So that's what the fixer bot is going to do with that extra PLS it mints. It's going to harvest these PRC20s, stick them in an AMM, like this Pulse Swap, whatever it's called, and offer it as incentive for people to come and play and provide liquidity. And the PLS itself, if that's a token that's used as an incentive to provide liquidity, that could come from the Genesis address that mints an extra 1%, these OA daughter addresses that own literally almost maybe 95% of Pulse tokens. So we'll see. I think it'll be really cool. There's a lot of possibilities here. Now we're kind of wrapping up. We have just a couple more slides here. Some protocols that might come over later, some that will probably come over immediately. The ones that we know of that kind of work out the gate are going to be MetaMask. You just point to PulseChain versus Ethereum mainnet. Easy. You have your wallet. Boom. So wallet done. Now a bridge, PLS to ETH, that's important and actually is going to be ready before launch so that people can bridge over their funds. Like I was mentioning earlier, and actually bond to actual real world value. Whenever it's time, right? I think the bridge will be closed for the first few days, weeks, or whatever to establish, okay, this launched at 0, right? Whatever these ratios are, whatever a PX PLS ratio it doesn't matter, right? If none of that is bonded to real world value and you can't exchange your PLS for ETH or USD or USDC, if it's not interchangeable, it's worthless, right? So pretty sure we're going to see mainnet launch. We're going to see the AMM bot come in, harvest the PRC20s, fix up the ratios. Once again, the ratios don't matter because you can't interchange it for anything that actually has value yet, right? Maybe that's fixed. The ratios are left chilling for a day, again, a few days, a week. And then you're like, all right, this is established at 0. It's worthless. You can't do anything with it. You can't bring it back to the real world. And so once that's established, then okay, let's open the bridge, the PLS ETH bridge. Boom. Once that's open, then value will be bonded like I described over here, right? Boom, the bridge is open, and this is the key, right? This PETH, that is the bridge. All right? And so that's when you actually get real world value. And this is an important protocol that needs to come over. What else needs to come over? You have your wallet, you have your bridge. You obviously need your Uniswap V2 fork, which is pretty easy. Forking Uniswap is really not hard. There are videos on YouTube. You could probably learn how to fork Uniswap in like a few days. I'm not even lying. Yeah, you can do that. So that's pretty easy. The protocols that might come over later are, like I was saying, a PancakeSwap fork, so something like a PulseSwap, an aggregator. So once you actually have, for example, your Uniswap fork and your PancakeSwap fork, now you have 2 AMMs. All right, maybe now you want an aggregator like 1inch to distribute your orders across both for best execution, right? So you get the best deal, least slippage. So I'd expect something like the PancakeSwap fork first, and then something like a 1inch. And then obviously things like Tornado Cash would be really cool, especially if enough people participate in the anonymity set, because then you have anonymity on Pulse, which would be so cool. Yeah, I'd love to see a PLS Tornado.cash. Definitely would love to see Tornado on PulseChain to give that option of anonymity where people can go in and enter the set and kind of avoid being traced through like chain analysis or any of that. Another thing that would be cool to see come over would be something like Etherscan, right? You already have Etherscan, you have BSC scan, and so it would make sense to have something like a Pulse scan, a PLS scan, whatever you want to call it, PulseChain scan, so that people can basically use a block explorer, and if they want to do chain analysis, whatever, then I think that would be important. And again, these might come over later. You'd expect them to, right? Especially 1inch. I'd expect 1inch to come over. The PancakeSwap fork is in the works. Pretty sure we're going to see all of this. Now the last one, V3, is, I touched on this in a previous video, but V3 is not licensed to be copied, to be forked for the maximum of the first 2 years ever since it launched on May 5th this year, right? So at the latest, we'd have to wait until May 5th of 2023. I believe it can be pushed to earlier if there's some sort of governance thing that decides it to be so. But I guess worst case scenario is you have to wait until May of 2023 to actually be able to fork Uniswap B3. But by then, maybe you have other type of concentrated liquidity AMM protocols that pop up, right? Because Uniswap B3 isn't the only one. And so if those other ones pop up and they're open source, well, guess what? You have opportunity to basically deploy that on PulseChain. And there you go. So that's pretty much it. It's pretty much what I wanted to cover. We covered sort of validating, we covered staking, the yield farming aspect of PulseChain. I know it was a lot of context, so I do kind of apologize I'm kind of realizing it was like half context, probably more. Let's see, 16 minutes of context and like 10 minutes of actual PulseChain DeFi. Oh man, I mean, it's disproportionate context to actual topic. So excuse that, but again, you want to be empathetic to the new people. So I hope that covered everything. I hope this was a comprehensive, evergreen piece of content and you can look back on it and be like, yo, this kid kind of knew what he was talking about, or he had no clue, completely lost. I don't know. Time will tell, right? But I appreciate you watching. Subscribe if you're new. Leave a thumbs up. Yeah, comment down below what your thoughts are on literally any of these points. And that's it. Go follow on Twitter, twitter.com/GerarDog here. Also, LookIntoHex. Twitter is just LookIntoHex, LookIntoHex.com. The Telegram group for LookIntoHex, t.me/LookIntoHex, is filling up. It's like 100 plus members in there already. So that's really cool. I'm glad you guys are hopping in there. I already have a few mods that are down to be mods. So I'm going to add them right after I film this. I'm going to go and add them as mods. Forgot to do that. And we'll open up the chat feature pretty soon. I'm hoping by the end of this week. If not, definitely next week. But yeah, let's open up the chat feature soon so you guys can get discussing in there. Because right now it's really just me kind of throwing videos and tweets at you. So sort of just kind of like promo. But it'll become an open discussion. Just want to kind of curate the vibe there first. Get some good mods in there first. Let it fill up. And then you guys can have at it with your awesome ideas. And it'll be cool because we'll be able to do like the voice chat too. So yeah, appreciate you watching. And I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.